Hello, my name is Kiran Joni. This is the 9th session and also the concluding session of the introduction series of the Eso-Loop Framework. There is one more session that I thought about introducing in this series. That is the praxis session of the framework. But on reconsideration, I thought about starting a separate series dealing with the praxis or the practical pedagogical aspect of this framework. So that means this is the concluding or the final part of the series. To recap what I did until now, I introduced the Eso-Loop framework as having 3 core components. The first key component that I introduced was the worldview part. That is, a complex ecological worldview was introduced. The second key component was the primary keystone constraint, that is effectual self-organization, which involves 4 dynamical heuristics. They are understand your current dispositional propensity, act in the adjacent possible, make use of the co-evolutionary potential of other systems, people, things, etc. And finally, leverage emergent and evolving reality. And it is important to understand that the emergent and evolving reality will become the current dispositional propensity or dispositional reality. So that dynamics will continue in a non-linear manner. So that is the nature of the keystone constraints. But in a later design, I added 2 more constraints as part of the effectual self-organization. They are, number 1, you are already a self-organizing system. It is a reminder. Okay, it is a reminder that you are already a self-organizing system. And because you are already a self-organizing system, you must act like self-organizing system instead of being cognitively hijacked by an external agent, model, or idea. These 2 constraints was later added with a clear intention in mind. This was added to reduce the prescriptive rigidity of the primary constraints and also to allow the entrepreneur or the framework users greater enabling freedom to exercise their agency. The third key component was the context-sensitive and context-free constraints. The context-free constraints comes before the specific context comes into being. And context-sensitive constraints enables and also emerges in the contextual dynamics. Although this is the case, as I already mentioned, my use of context-sensitive constraints in this framework was not to represent the original dimension that Alicia Herrero was talking about. That particular idea was used for this design to enable the entrepreneurs as a design solution. And that is the overall articulation of this framework. Now, it is important to understand that the design of this framework was based on a deductive logic. So I used already established realities or foundational realities to design this framework, which involves the first key point, that is entrepreneurship is a complex domain. The second key point is that a naive empiricism and linear reductive approaches doesn't work in a domain like entrepreneurship. The third key point is that design solutions based on naive empiricism and linear reductive approaches doesn't work in a domain like entrepreneurship. And fourth key point is that if a domain is complex, design solutions should be primarily based on complexity perspective. The dynamical features of complex systems must be acknowledged and also considered when it comes to such a design. Ignoring these dynamics in favor of reductive methods will be counterproductive and damaging for the users of these models. And finally, the Eso-Loop framework was designed based on complexity perspective. The dynamical features of complex systems are acknowledged and used for this design, adapting insights from successful applied complexity approaches like constraints-led approach, gated self-organization approach, the Canadian framework, etc. Now, since these dynamical features are already established by science, these are natural science constraints. Dale Snowden, who is the creator of the Canadian framework, calls such things as natural science as a constraint. According to him, there is no point in developing tools or methods which contradict what we know from natural science. This means, depending on the context, you cannot violate the knowledge foundation or constraint that was developed from fundamental science. For example, if you are trying to send a rocket, you cannot ignore natural science constraints like gravity, friction, thermodynamics, etc. These dynamical features are already pre-packaged or pre-designed into the science of designing rockets. So these constraints are already by default established and cannot be ignored. Likewise, if we are designing a solution for entrepreneurs, we cannot violate natural science foundational constraints. Since entrepreneurship is a complex domain, all of these features, like for example, nonlinear dynamics, large number of heterogeneous and interdependent components, elements, variables, and the nonlinear dynamics of these various types of variables, self-organization, emergent property, non-proportionality, open nature with fuzzy boundaries, a nested and embedded nature of complex systems, dynamics of evolution, co-evolution, adaptation, exaptation, etc. Nature of causation, which is different. We cannot know the causal structures a priori. We can only know the current dispositional propensities in a complex system because we are dealing with multi-causal system. There are cumulative causes, emergent causes. There are cumulative emergent causes. Effects feeds back into becoming the cause. So all of these features are there in a complex system. We cannot design successful design solutions by ignoring these dynamical features of complex systems like entrepreneurship. These features should be inbuilt and default in any kind of designs that focus on complex systems like entrepreneurship. These forces cannot be ignored. And through the design of Eso-Loop Framework, what I have done is bring all of these ideas, dynamical features, or an ecology of ideas into a single system so that all of these ideas will transfer to the learners in an ecologically grounded dynamics. So to finally conclude with a contrast with other approaches, other models, etc. First of all, contrary to other models and methods, Eso-Loop is built on insights from various applied complexity approaches. As I already mentioned, constraints-led approach, the guided self-organization approach, the Canadian framework, and most importantly, the dynamical features of complex systems. All of these dynamical features informed the design of Eso-Loop framework. Second key point is that contrary to other models and methods, Eso-Loop stresses the need to harmonize the growing collective human intelligence. So as I already mentioned in the core design of the framework, there exist enablers for exploration, enablers for cultivating diversity, and also importantly, there exist enablers for co-evolutionary instrumentalism, where ideas are encouraged and not treated as opposing to each other or exclusionary to each other. All of these tools can be accessed and cultivated and kept with us without having to exclude or cancel each other out. The third key point is that contrary to other models and methods, Eso-Loop promotes interdisciplinary exploration. Here it is important to note that there is no disciplinary boundaries in the real world, and this framework encourages the entrepreneurial actor to explore without any kind of boundary conditions. The next key point is that contrary to other models and methods, Eso-Loop makes it easier for you to transparently see and navigate the big picture, which can be analogically considered the forest, even if you had to attend to the contextual demand, which can be analogically considered the tree. This means the structure of the framework enables the users or entrepreneurs to visualize the big picture, which includes the context-free constraints that the entrepreneur already brings in, and also the context-sensitive enablers, like, for example, socio-economic material aspects, technology, connectivity, policies, employees, co-founders, investors. So these are all enablers. So the frame of the framework enables the acting agent to visualize the entire system with great clarity without losing the self-organization dynamics, which can be considered as an extremely context-sensitive dynamics. The fifth key point is that, contrary to existing prescriptive models, Eso-Loop Framework is mutable, adaptable, evolvable. Most ideas and models in the domain of entrepreneurship are self-aggrandizing and self-perpetuating without any possibility of evolvability. As I already discussed, this is not the case when it comes to the Eso-Loop Framework. You can add your own constraints and add enablers to enable exploration. So there is a lot of scope for designability in the Eso-Loop Framework, changeability in the Eso-Loop Framework. The next key point is that, contrary to existing prescriptive models, Eso-Loop promotes effective learning and transfer that reflects in the structure of the framework itself. Eso-Loop encapsulates various complexity-friendly functional dispositions into a single framework so that an ecology of ideas in its dynamics will transfer to the users, not just one or two ideas, isolated ideas, or a process like lean startup. Further, learning something at one point in time and using it adaptively at a different temporal decision point or decision context is extremely challenging. This is because isolated ideas doesn't sustain without connecting with meaningful pre-existing knowledge or contextual application. So this is very important point to understand. Without the existence of meaningful coherence, it is very difficult to transfer our learning to an adaptive, unknown, and emergent context. Eso-Loop Framework does three important things in this issue. First of all, it gives a permanent position, a meaningful, coherent, dynamical structure in which you can build on or place or connect newly learned ideas and models. The second point is that Eso-Loop Framework forces constant updation. It enables and encourages you to learn, unlearn, add, remove, design, combine, recombine, remix, and customize solutions to suit the ever-changing dynamics of the particular context. The third key point is that the Eso-Loop Framework enables and encourages the users to design their own emergent solutions for learning and transfer problems, rather than attempting to give a one-size-fits-all solution. This is clear when I was introducing the context-free constraints like adaptiveness, diversity, evolvability, etc. I was only pointing to the problem. I was pointing to the importance of these important dispositional propensities. I was not prescribing a solution with a great precision or something like that. That was not the agenda. The seventh and the final key point is that, contrary to existing prescriptive models, Eso-Loop has inbuilt elements of immunity against the cognitive hijacking, disciplinary darkness, and certainty merchants. In a complex and uncertain world, we make decisions under the constraints of limited knowledge, resources, and time. This results in a tendency of human brain to solve problems in the most simple and straightforward way, rather than utilizing a more sophisticated and effort-intensive solution. This human weakness is often exploited by certainty merchants who comes up with confident advice and one-size-fits-all solutions in extremely complex domains like education, entrepreneurship, climate change, energy crisis, sustainability, etc. These areas are extremely complex where one-size-fits-all solutions never works, but certainty merchants are an extremely visible part of these kind of solution space. Further, another key point is that people with disciplinary and domain commitments become more committed to disciplinary domain boundaries and methods, aligning perfectly with legacy incentive structures over time. Now, this is also a great danger. I would like to label this as a kind of cognitive hijacking, where the agent's evolutionary learning and adaptive potential is being compromised because of strong pre-existing one-size-fits-all models and other commitments. This framework, the Eso-Loop framework, is designed to create default immunity against such cognitive hijacking. The meta dispositions that are 6 core dispositional propensities are intended to scan or maybe understand the phase space, the entrepreneurial phase space, for potential elements of bounded rationality, fixation errors, or hijacking attempts. This framework is designed to create default immunity against such cognitive hijacking efforts. So that was the entire bigger picture idea of the design of Eso-Loop framework. Finally, before signing off this introduction series, it must be remembered that, as suggested in the 6th context-free constraint, the framework itself is a permanent work in progress. Borrowing Ilya Prigoghin's terminology, it is in permanent construction. The framework itself is in permanent construction. So that means the Eso-Loop framework itself is not a closed system. It's an open system. New ideas will come in, and old ideas inside this ecosystem of ideas might be considered irrelevant in a future design. So because the Eso-Loop framework is designed to be evolvable, even though I made some mistakes in this design, it is correctable, changeable, evolvable. So with that remark, I'm ending the series. Thank you so much for listening. See you soon in the next series, where I'll be discussing the praxis aspect of this framework. So take care.